school committee meeting. I'd like to have a roll call vote of the school committee. Carla Nazaro.
Here.
John Parks.
Here.
Aaron Gaffin.
Here.
And Tom Wise.
Here.
And Chuck Robinson's here, and Sean Brandt will be joining us a little later. So for tonight's agenda, we'll again have public input open for the entirety of the meeting. Just send an email to D as in David, G as in Gary, school committee at reading.k12.ma.us, and we will address those or announce those public comments at the end of the meeting. We do put it at the beginning of the agenda so everybody knows that it is open immediately for that. So we'll start the meeting with our consent agenda, followed by reports, and with new business we'll have a summer food discussion, a curriculum update by Chris Kelly, Heather Leonard, and Allison Straker, and then we'll declare surplus property, and then for old business we'll have a vote on our budget that was approved by town meeting, as well as we'll have a vote on the capital plan that was also approved, and then any other budget things that need to be cleaned up before the fiscal year ends on June 30th. So with that, excuse me, I'm sorry. We also have in attendance from central office and other staff, Dr. Doherty, Assistant Superintendent Kelly, CFO Gail Dowd, Director of Student Services, Dr. Stiles, Director of Human Resources, Jen Allard, Linda Engelson, our assistant, and Allison Straker and Heather Leonard, I believe, are here for the curriculum update. And I am again always thankful of our technology staff. I believe we have Paul here tonight, and just thankful for that and the great job you've been doing since now, I guess, April, right? So just amazing. So thank you for that. So having said that, is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Yes, Chuck, this is Tom Wise. Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I second Carla.
Carla, is there anyone that has any comments on it? Okay, seeing none, have a roll call vote. Aaron Gaffin.
Aye.
John Parks.
Aye.
Carla Nazaro.
Aye.
Tom Wise.
Aye.
And Chuck Robinson, aye. Thank you. Now we will have reports. Dr. Doherty, you going to do like you've done at the last couple meetings, put up something for reports, or are we just going to go to each person? You there, John? Yeah, Dr. Stiles, do you have a report?
Yes, I do have a report. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did want to update everybody on the status of our ESY summer school program. Allison Wright, the assistant director, is absolutely amazing and has been working very long and hard to make sure that we have everything we need to get our summer school up and running. We're serving about 300 students in total. we have sent letters to all the families and let them know what our criteria were as we start in-person sessions. So we're going to start with students in our sub-separate program that have not been able to access any remote learning. So right now we're working on those specific schedules, and we will be getting them out to families as soon as possible. Everybody else will be starting remote. And then as we go through the summer, if we are able to increase in-person services, we will do that. As of now, we are still waiting from additional guidance from the state. The state told us they'll be providing some additional information before July 6th. So we don't know what that will be or the impact that that's going to have on our summer program. I need to give a huge shout out to our nurse manager, Mary, who is amazing, and she's doing training for all of the staff. However, they told us that DPH is going to do a train the trainer model, and they have not provided Mary with the training yet. So we have an initial training that Mary's going to be doing with the staff, and then we'll do follow-up trainings when DPH trains the nurses. We've been also working very closely with Ms. Dowd and Joe Huggins and Dr. Doherty around all of the PPE we need and what that is going to look like. We're actually doing a walkthrough of the building tomorrow because we really need to take data around how the staff and students are going to respond during that first week that staff and students are together. The very first week of instruction, we're going to actually have the teachers teaching from the classroom, the first wave of students that are going to come in. That way the students will become familiar with their classroom and seeing their teachers wearing the PPE, and the teachers can talk about what that is going to be looking like when they come into the building. So as again, Allison Wright will be reaching out. Kelly Decato and Leander Corman have been calling families to check on transportation and availability because we do need to plan for cleaning in between sessions. So we're trying to figure all of those pieces out. But we are really excited to see the students either virtually or in person, and we will keep revising as the summer goes on and we get additional guidance from the state. The other thing I wanted to just circle back to quickly, a couple weeks ago I talked about the reading assessments that we're working on, and thanks to Dr. Doherty and Ms. Dowd, who have been amazing in helping us get our training up and running. We've just started a training with Dr. Orkin's group, Crafting Minds. It's called Investigating Reading Difficulties Using Assessment to Inform Instructional Planning. Excuse me. We have about 30 staff attending, some general ed, including Chris Kelly, Allison Stryker, and all the reading specialists. And we have special ed staff attending, including the team chairs and the psychologists. So what we're really focusing on during this 9 hours of training, 4 of which will be synchronous and the rest is asynchronous, is really how the reading circuit develops in the brain and the implications of that, because reading isn't a natural process. And then we're using assessment to understand student strengths and weaknesses. So really looking very thoughtfully into the subtypes of reading impairments: phonological, working memory, rapid naming, and oral language. And then how do we come together to do general ed and special ed assessments using those essential components of reading instruction? So really looking at assessment batteries that have foundational skills, then single words and connected text, and then also putting it through the different domains of accuracy, automaticity, and oral language comprehension. So that by the end of this training, we are going to have solid batteries for all of our special education assessments, and then we're going to have a lot of knowledge that we're going to be able to work with general ed to figure out what students are struggling and how do we support them, and then leading into the TAT process or the evaluation process. So we are very excited to have people participating, and it's an amazing opportunity for the district. So those are my updates.
Excellent, thank you. Gail, did you have, or were you gonna just present tonight?
I have all of mine are covered in the presentations. Thank you.
And Chris, same?
Yeah, the same thing. I'm going to cover it on the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Doherty?
I'm all set, Chuck. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to the committee. Sorry, I got a dog in the background here. Mr. John Parks, you have a report?
Quick one for ad hoc. We did meet last week, and we have started moving things forward. We've got some a group of the committee starting to do some development, including Sean Brandt and myself. Next meeting is July 1st.
Thank you. Aaron?
I don't have anything this week.
Carla?
No report. Thank you.
Tom, did you have anything?
No report here either, Chuck. Thank you.
Okay, I'm good as well. So now we will have the, I guess, the this food services update, and I believe Danielle. I just realized I didn't announce that you were on the call, and I apologize. This is Danielle Collins, who I had an opportunity with Mr. Wise to meet last week, and really excited that she's on board. So.
Hi there, how are you? So I just wanted to present briefly, just to give you a summary of what's been happening in food services. We switched to a summer seamless model pretty soon following when, our model changed. And I just wanted to give you an update because so much has changed. So initially, we did receive waivers from both the USDA and the state about meal pattern and procurement and reimbursement and some other pieces that about consumption on site. And there's actually 5 or 6 waivers initially given. And those waivers actually, the end date was June 30. So what that means is we were allowed to do distribution to all of our families with a free reimbursement rate for both breakfast and lunch for every child within a household under the age of 21. And what we've chosen to do is provide a week's worth of meals in that distribution. And we're doing pickups for that distribution every Tuesday from 11 till 12 noon. It's free of charge to all families. And initially you had to be free or reduced, but now actually it's a seamless summer model, and reimbursement is the free rate for any child that wishes to participate under the age of 21. So the benefit, and we had to have our answer into the state portal on the 17th. So we did have this preliminary conversation so that we would be able to participate if we chose to, was about the extension through till August 31st. There are several benefits. One, the families who have been partaking in our program would be able to continue. And where we're unsure of what the model may look like for fall, this would allow us the capability of continuing in the fall, should we be looking at a hybrid model or any other version of our program. Whereas if we decide to discontinue, we cannot, we would be giving up the ability to restart. Also, we have additional access to emergency feeding. And what that means is the resources given to us by both the USDA and the state will continue through the summer, and we have been given additional items. Also, we are participating in Farm to Families Fresh, which basically what this program is that our farmers throughout the country, they're being forced to throw away perfectly good food because their model and their typical customer is not available to them, which is just such a shame. So For those of us who are interested, I did bid on full pallet on our behalf. I'm able to distribute to all of our families 20-pound cases of mixed fresh fruits and vegetables that our farmers have in excess. So, as perfect, for instance, they're getting fresh melon, fresh Asian pears, romaine lettuce, carrots, potatoes, onions, just a full variety of healthy, fresh foods for our families. So once again, that is available to us because of our participation and will continue now through August 31st. The disadvantage in ending, once again, would be that we would lose access to the Farm to Families Fresh. Our families would not be receiving the meals that we have been providing, and we would not be able to start in the fall if we decided to. And also, once again, those food resources that we've been given access to, they would end. So we felt that there was plenty of advantage, and it's not a financial liability to the district. It is fully funded. We are being reimbursed at the free rate for all the meals that we are providing, as well as access to the food resources and Farm to Families Fresh. There is zero cost to the district. It's provided free of charge. Once again, I have been, our numbers have been climbing at June to date. Please note that not all of the dates have been included quite yet. They've been climbing, and actually I had about 7 families reach out to me. So we'll have an additional 7 families tomorrow to add to our distribution for the summer. So if this is something that you feel would benefit, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.
So Danielle, thank you. As we talked last week, I mean, to me, this is just the right thing to do. I mean, it's just, and I'm glad that you're leading it for us. My question is, with the meals served, does that include Wakefield, or is that just Reading?
So I am also running this program in Wakefield. I'm doing distribution
so those
in Reading.
numbers are Wakefield as well.
No, these are exclusively Reading.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Does any of the committee have any comments or questions?
I'd like to just say thank you, Danielle. The program, from what I've heard from the public, has been great and very well received, and we appreciate all your hard work on it.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Danielle.
Nice meeting you all.
Have a good night.
You too.
All right. Chris, you're up.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to put on the PowerPoint, but before I do so, I'd like to introduce Heather and Allison, who will be helping a little bit tonight. This entire presentation is meant to be a snapshot of the many, many things that the Learning and Teaching Department has been working on all year. As you know, our team, I joined the Reading Public Schools 2 years ago, so this is our second year working together. Certainly, I don't think any of us could have anticipated the year that we've had with our closure and everything, but I couldn't be more proud of all of the members of our learning and teaching staff, along with Heather and Allison, who will be helping today to present some snapshots. I do want to call attention to the fact that there are other members of my team. I also work with the behavioral coach, Lauren Sabella, our data coach, Courtney Fogarty. Also, in addition, we work with curriculum leads at the middle school and district-wide curriculum leads. I'm a member of the RMHS leadership team, and I also meet very regularly with all the department heads at the high school. And obviously, I work very closely, as do Heather and Allison, with our building leaders. And I'll let them introduce themselves, but just as a caveat, the work that Heather and Allison does is really exemplar. I'm extremely proud of the work they do. They work really with all of the district from pre-K to 8 in their category. So I'll let them introduce themselves, and then I'll share the PowerPoint, and we'll show you a year in review.
Thank you, Chris. And Linda, I don't know whether you saw Sean is here. Hi, Sean.
Hi, Sean.
Hi, everyone.
All right, Heather, maybe you could introduce yourself. I know you've met the team the original school committee members, but maybe some of the newer members haven't met you a little yet. So maybe you could just introduce yourself and give a tiny bit of your background. And then Allison, the same thing. Their bios are pretty long, so we'll just do
Sure.
the quick one. Thank
I'll
you.
be brief. Hi, everybody. I'm Heather Leonard, STEM curriculum coordinator, and wrapping up year 7 in Reading, which it's been a ride. So prior to the opportunity to work with this amazing team, I was the principal at Barrows Elementary School. Go Shining Stars! But it's been a really great opportunity to see the broad lens across the district over the last 2 years, and certainly has been a learning experience over the last few months, and I wouldn't want to do it with anybody else. So I'm really appreciative to work with Chris and Allison and all of the leaders and all the educators in this district. So thank you for the time to share a bit of the work this evening. We're really excited about the work that's been happening and also where we're going. So we appreciate the chance to share some of that tonight.
Hi, everybody. It's nice
Thank
to meet you. Allison Straker. And prior to coming to Reading almost 2 years ago, I was a building-based literacy specialist in Lowell. And I just really love doing this curriculum side of things. The professional learning still gives me that little bit of teaching. It's just with bigger kids, grown-ups, which are a whole different story. But we're having a great time. Heather and I, we are shocked sometimes at how well we work together. And we're excited to share everything we've, worked on this year and the things that we have in the works.
Thank you, Allison.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Allison. I'm going to share our PowerPoint. If you could hold your questions to the end, I think that would be helpful for us. And then we're happy to answer any questions you might have. All right. Can you see that PowerPoint?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So as I mentioned, tonight we're really doing a year in review. This is really the 5,000-foot view of all of the learning and teaching updates that have happened. By no means this is a comprehensive list. This is really some big items that we talked about, and we're just going to spotlight a few things from each category so that you have a little bit more of knowledge about the many workings. So what do the Learning and Teaching Department do? What do? We provide professional development and training, both to staff and now in remote learning. We did quite a bit with families as well. I imagine we'll continue with that family training. We also do training on other topics. A bulk of our work is our committee and our curriculum work, which is always ongoing, and some of it we've presented about in the past, and we'll give you a little snapshot on some of the things that we've been working on. And then curriculum resources and tools. What are the tools and resources that we use to do the work? And then new this year, prior to March 13th, when we closed, we really had to retool ourselves, think about how we're going to move forward. And Dr. Doherty had us really look at what has been done with continuity of learning. I am going to provide a little bit of a snapshot in the surveys that went out a few weeks ago. We got a very robust participation in the surveys, and a few quotes from some of them, but we've been using a ton of the surveys to guide our work on our next steps of what worked, what could work better, and what are families, students, and staff thinking about. So under professional development, again, this is at the 5,000-foot view. I don't expect you to know what all of these terms are, but this is some of not just single trainings. We offer a lot more of those. These are the theme trainings that we provided regularly throughout the year. Some of it at the elementary level, some of it for administrators specifically, some for core subjects or content area subjects like the reading specialist meetings that Allison regularly holds with all the reading specialists across the district. Of course, I've talked to this committee before about our Reading Institute, which is our regular training. We provided workshops last summer. We provided the PD day on the election day in the fall and organized all of that. We have some regular PD offerings that happen throughout the year, mostly on cultural proficiency. We continue to offer shelter English immersion, which is part of a state requirement, but also our teachers have the benefit of having it right here in Reading. Our mentor program, we support that work with book clubs and regular meetings. We've done some coaching, primarily through the Reading High Leadership Team with Jean Thompson Grove. Obviously, we do our regular restraint training, our regular de-escalation training, our open circle trainings. This year, Heather did quite a bit of training in 7th and 8th grade with the Math and Vision program. We were lucky enough to get a Reading Education Foundation grant to send a team to the National Council, I hope I'm getting it right, Heather, National Council of Teachers of Mathematics Conference, which is a national conference that was held in Boston this year. We had hoped to send some to the science conference as well, but unfortunately that didn't happen due to COVID. And then we did send a group of administrators to a conference in the fall on how to support Title I students and reading supports. I'm going to have Heather walk you through a spotlight on some science training that happened this year.
So I'm excited to share this just as an example to give you a picture of the way that it might feel. Frankly, each of the PD and the training we do is so personalized based on the target audience and the staff we're working with. I'm really excited to share. This was a wonderful opportunity we had this year. I had reached out to the Boston Museum of Science, which has a gorgeous educator resource center at the top of the museum, and they let you come and use the space. So it's beautiful. You might be able to see from that picture we had our screen projected of our work, and behind that you got that great snapshot of the river in Boston. And we got to use this space, and I partnered with them for resources and brainstorming, and then actually had a chance to really personalize it. So our grades 3, 4, and 5 teachers, and the training was focused around the idea of the methodology that we use when we're teaching science. So we have a really robust curriculum tool that we use for grades 3, 4, and 5 science called No Atom. But this was thinking about the curriculum from the side of the routines and the methods and the techniques you utilize when teaching that curriculum. So we focused on how do we think about science teaching from a phenomena-based instruction routine. And when we say that term, what we're thinking about is that idea of looking at things that are naturally occurring and allowing students to notice and wonder about them, following more of a routine of what true scientists do. And then they get a chance to think about what do they already know about it, how can they make connections to what they think they're seeing, and then what do they need to learn, and how can we design opportunities for exploration and discovery, again, as real scientists do in the world. And allowing that wondering and noticing to be an authentic organic hook into the learning, but also provide that underlying theme throughout the unit. So taking the curriculum tools we have, but think about how are we planning our instructional methods strategically to connect to those wonderings. So we spent some time together at the Museum of Science. We had a chance to go back to our schools and then try out some of the shifted instructional methodology. And then we came back together in Reading in January. And you'll see a picture there of some of our teachers collaborating around reorganization of our unit. So taking the curriculum tools we have and thinking about in what order do things make sense? What do we want to have as a more organic phenomena-based discovery? What might be more guided? How can we plan to use those resources in a really strategic way? And this is partnering with the work that's really been blossoming in science education for the last few years. And it's something that the state has been working a lot with as well in my state leader network. And it was just a really great opportunity to connect, to build resources. And we took all of the grade across the district together. So there was that immediate networking that happened across schools and the sharing of ideas and strategies. And then you'll see in the lower left-hand corner, that's actually a screenshot from the Department of Education gave a webinar to all teachers across the state to share some of the ways that people are teaching. And one example they used was one of our fantastic teachers, Helen Palmieri from Killam, had taken this instructional routine of phenomena-based instruction we just learned this year. She had translated it into applying it during those remote learning settings and had used that noticing, wondering, and drawing your model to show your thinking in a way that allowed students to continue to engage in that exploratory, discovery-based science learning. So she was highlighted both in a Science Leader Network as a way you could teach science remotely using phenomena-based instruction, and then also with teachers across the state, which was really exciting. So it's a really great way to see that when we're thoughtful and intentional with that PD, it can translate across settings, virtually, in person, and hybrid. So that was a pretty cool, it was a pretty cool thing to have that highlighted as well as an example of great teaching. So.
Before we go on to the next slide, I just want to point out that a key element of both Heather and Allison's work with professional development is really looking at engagement. And I was lucky enough to head into the Museum of Science and watch the excitement of using the facility, working with the department there, and they have such talent there, and really Heather partnering with them. And that was really all Heather's idea. She coordinated it. And it was really exciting. I think it was an excellent example of the kind of engagement and quality programming that we try to offer our staff.
Thanks, Chris.
Welcome. All right, let's see.
The next piece I can speak to too, if that's okay, and just another example of a different way that we might provide professional development and training. So once we realized and heard from the state in April that we wouldn't be returning to schools full time, we started to figure out how can we provide that cross-school networking that we had begun to facilitate with our teachers. I know that we shared with you in a previous presentation that we have been providing workshops that allow K through 5 teachers connect with each other across schools on a frequent, ongoing basis. So during this, during our remote learning time, we had drop-in sessions for each grade level to get a chance to log in, to connect with each other, share with each other. It gave them an opportunity to share what was working well for them, what tools they were utilizing, what strategies they were using, what was challenging for them. And so sharing some of their challenges actually unearthed ways that people could share something that worked for them well to address it, questions that were arising. And it led to some really beautiful and organic training that was happening within peers. So even within the drop-in, somebody was pulling up a tool to show another peer in another school how to utilize a platform. The example that I saw was Flipgrid, and teaching that teacher how to do it. And some of the best PD we get is from our colleagues in district. Some of the grade levels actually joined each other's Google Classrooms so they could see what one school was doing, how they were organizing it, what other schools were doing. They built some shared drives that were on the cloud so that they could share each other's resources and lessons. Again, just continuing to build relationships across schools, but also work towards that idea of having consistent opportunities for experiences, not exactly replicated, but yet that we all see where other schools are thinking, what's working for them, and how can we make sure we're sharing successes and offering those opportunities for students, no matter what school building you're in. And these were great. And these are the teachers taking their time in the middle of their packed days to connect with each other. And it was really great. We had groups of all sizes across all grade levels. And it was really again, it was a really wonderful opportunity to see how they can really learn and benefit from sharing with their colleagues across district. So another example.
Thank you, Heather. Allison, can you share this next slide?
Yeah, so something else about professional development that we want to highlight for you tonight is the way that we've worked all year to make our professional learning more targeted. You know that some of the Wednesday release time is devoted to district-wide professional work. And in the past, those sessions were very large, and they included all the teachers from K, sometimes pre-K, through grade 5. And what we found in our first year was that that was doable, but it didn't always feel targeted enough. It didn't feel like we were hitting everybody. It didn't feel like we were meeting everybody's needs. So this year, what we were able to do was to provide that Wednesday time in grade level bands. So we had a K1, a 2-3, and a 4-5 group. So everyone still had their same number of Wednesdays, but Heather and I just sort of did the sessions three times. But that allowed us to make each session a little bit different. It allowed us to be a little more targeted in what the different grade levels were working on at that time of year. And it allowed us to take feedback of a smaller group, because as you know, when you get feedback from everyone from K-5, it's all over the place. It's hard to really make adjustments. So we were really excited about how that went this year, and we had a lot of great feedback from teachers. It not only made our groups smaller, which is always nice, it allowed us to share targeted articles, targeted videos, like more specific to the grade, so you don't have a 5th grade teacher watching a 1st grade classroom snippet video. So that was really exciting, and we're really happy with how that went this year. And another way that we differentiated in the literacy PD, and you'll hear me talking about literacy PD for K2, because you heard Heather talking about professional development for 3 through 5 in science. And we didn't want everybody to be having professional learning experiences in everything, because that's just, it's not conducive to real deep work and deep learning. So with the K1 and 2 teachers, I focused on literacy, reading, writing, and phonics units. And we were able to do grade level specific, where in years past, K1 would be together, or K1 and 2 would be together. And while that worked well for the Wednesdays to have mixed groups, when you're really digging into a unit, you want to be able to be grade specific. So we had grade specific full day learning, which is also a shift, a little bit of a shift, because I really advocated for teachers having time to sort of sit with the information, because what was happening in past was teachers were going to a morning session, learning something new, having a great session, and then going right back to school. And so if you've ever gone right back to school or work, it's like all that stuff you were just doing goes out the window, because you just don't have time to sit and think. So we really built in the time, which we thought was so important, for teachers to just sit with it and to collaborate and talk through everything and think about what it's going to look like in their classroom when they do go back. So that was some of the shifts that we made this year that we're really happy about.
Thank you, Allison. One of the other shout outs that I'd like to give is some of those Wednesday afternoons, we were able to use the room at the library. Not all of them.
Oh, it's our favorite. Yeah.
And we just want to say that we've formed a great partnership with the Reading Public Library, and it's really nice, along with providing PD that's engaging and appropriate and specific. It's really nice to have a varied setting. It's really hard to have a PD session in kindergarten chairs for adults. So we definitely have worked hard. It's not always easy, because in our district space is at a premium, but we're open to using spaces around town, and we've been extremely thrilled with the library. They've really worked well with us. Just want to give them a shout out. Sorry. So at the district level, we've done quite a bit of district PD, but one that I want to spotlight today is the fabulous course that we have been running now for the last 2 years on cultural proficiency and competency. It's actually a 15-hour 1 credit, if people choose to take it for 1 graduate credit course, that is offered in our district by Karen Hall, who is one of our English language learner teachers. She's actually now teaching this course in some of our neighboring districts because they heard about it and they love it. Here's an example of, she had a Zoom call. She actually did 4 sessions of this since school started this year. She did several last summer, and then this year we've run it 4 times. Some of them were in person, and then when our closures happened, we had a hybrid class, and now she's full remote. So I think up to date, we have had 103 teachers in the district. And by teachers, I mean principals. I know Jennifer Stice took this course. A lot of our principals have taken this course. And we just continue to offer it. Additionally, we are encouraging all our new staff to take it as part of their 3-year onboarding. And currently, this course primarily deals with cultural proficiency through the lens of English language learners. I know Karen does spend some time talking about race and biases, implicit bias around that. But we are going to be expanding that into a secondary workshop. And I know Grant Hightower is working on that, and will be presenting a smaller scale workshop this summer for feedback so that we can build sort of a companion course to this, if you will. And we've had great feedback on this, and it's been really great. So thank you to Karen Hall, and also Gail's department that's worked really well to make sure that we continue to offer this high quality programming. At the 5,000-foot view, here are some of the committee and curriculum work that has been done. By no means is this a complete list. I know principals often have their own curriculums. These are ones that myself or members of my team have been involved in. As you may know, we have been working on the elementary report card. I'll talk a little bit about that on a future slide. We've been doing some elementary math curriculum work, middle school math curriculum work, elementary social studies curriculum work, high school history 1, which would be 9th grade curriculum work, professional development committee, which has been meeting for the last 2 years with me, and we have some exciting work that we've done in that. A diversity committee. I know a lot of the schools have their own, but we are instituting a district-wide one. RISE Middle School and RMHS electives curriculum guides, which are continuing. And I know that I have presented on those to this board before about that. We are still on target to get those completed by the end of the calendar year. In all grades and all subjects. Mentor and Induction Revision Committee. Our entire Mentor and Induction Committee has been completely retooled, and I have a fantastic committee that has been working on that. That is co-chaired with me with Jen Allard, our Human Resource Administrator, and Lisa Maria Polito, our Joshua Eaton Principal, who has been working really hard, in addition to a lot of awesome teachers that have volunteered their time to help with that. The Youth Risk Survey that we provide every 2 years, we did put together a team to do some proactive work in that, and I will talk a little bit about that on a future slide. And then obviously the Portrait of the Graduate work that Dr. Doherty's been working on. Some of the members of our team have been on that. And obviously a big part of the work that we've been doing the last few months is on remote learning. So again, a spotlight here, just a snapshot. I'm going to have Allison talk a little bit about some of the K-5 social studies work that's been happening this year.
Thanks, Chris. So we did form a social studies committee of K-5 staff. I think we were at 10 teachers and we had 1 principal. And we were just kicking this, really getting off the ground when March 13th happened and we all had to stay home. So it's been a lot of thinking about how we can revise to keep it going, which is sort of what I'll be working on in the next several weeks. But our committee work really sometimes looks very much like professional learning, and this committee definitely did. It's been a long time in district since social studies was sort of had a big overhaul, and we were going to take a really hard look at our resources and our outcomes and what we wanted kids to be able to do in terms of social studies. So we started off with vision work, and that was our first meeting. We really wanted to picture this idea of what would it look like in action. What is our social studies instruction going to look like? So that was a really fun process to go through with the team. We did the futures protocol. If anyone's done that, where you sort of imagine what it looks like 5 years from now, and then you think back about how you got there. So that was the beginning parts of our work. The other thing that was a big part of our initial dig into this was to look at inquiry, because just like what Heather mentioned about science instruction, we really want our social studies instruction to be more reflective of what social scientists actually do. And so where they call it phenomena-based instruction in science, we call it inquiry in social studies. So we did a lot of, we together as a team watched a webinar, and we dug into this book that you see pictured called The Inquiry Illuminated, to see how we might bring some of that into the social studies curriculum that we're trying to build. And so that work is ongoing, and we're being really thoughtful because we don't want to rush into implementing things without time and vetting, and being able to give teachers the proper tools and training, especially when we're asking them to move to an inquiry-based model. We're very much moving away from social studies as memorizing states and capitals and facts and dates and things like that, and really thinking more of what does it mean to be a global citizen.
All right, thank you, Allison.
You're welcome. Oh, it's me again. So obviously when remote learning became a thing, Heather and I pivoted a lot of our work to trying to support teachers in teaching from home. So when we had our first initial phase one, we put together those resource sheets by grade where there were ideas for parents to help kids stay engaged at home. This was sort of when we were in the beginning weeks of it. And then when we moved into phase two and we knew we were going to be home for a longer period of time, Heather and I worked hard at looking at the curriculum that teachers were already sort of digging into when they were in the classroom, and how does that translate into something relevant from home. And so we spent some time there in those weeks in April building some samples for teachers. So that was not necessarily committee work, the Heather and Allison committee. So that was what our focus on was during that time.
And I think interestingly, it's a really good time for us all to pause and realize that we're all learners all the time. And if this didn't really highlight the fact that our need to continue to learn, be flexible, change what we know, try something, take risks. What we know is that some things worked well, some things didn't work well, some things worked well for some levels or for some areas and not for others. And so this work is ongoing. So while we know our teachers are experts at their children's developmental levels and at what the standards are asking, what we're learning is what does that then mean when we're translating teaching through online vehicles. And so when we're thinking forward towards next year, we know that people have now had a chance to try things. And now, regardless of the circumstances next year, we can only learn and take all that knowledge we have from our experiences to plan forward and feel like we have a more robust preparation. And one of the beauties of this remote learning is I've heard from teachers at elementary and middle level talking about, you know, I hadn't had the chance to try some of these tools before. I'd always wanted to, and now I'm going to bring them into my classroom, even when we're back full brick and mortar. And so it's exciting too to realize that this learning phase, although it was thrust upon us not in a time that allowed us to thoughtfully and strategically plan like we prefer. However, from there, we're going to take all of those successes and those challenges and help them to only make our classroom instruction more rich and engaging in a continual way. So I think that's been a really great part of this work too.
Thank you, Heather and Allison. At the district level, we had several curriculum committees going on. As I mentioned, the Professional Development Committee, our team has been meeting this year, all year, and that is co-led by Jen Allard, Lisa Maria Polito, and like I said, we have 7 or 8 teachers that have been supporting our work. We're actually just about finishing a professional development guide for teachers so that all of the resources of professional development ideas, recertification expectations, a lot of the DESE things are pretty hard to find on the DESE websites. So our committee has been working really hard to put everything into one manual that staff can just utilize. And certainly when we have new staff, we can say, here's a guidebook of all the PD offerings that we will plan to hold, the things that will be oncoming will be on this website, those kind of things, as well as professional development expectations. Our staff is required both through the DESE regulations and even our internal support to do ongoing professional development. So kudos and shout out to that team. In addition, we have been using our what we're calling Pilot A of our progress reports, report cards for K to 5. This year we did a lot of revisions on our standards-based report cards, and we have been working on revisions for next year. So we knew it was going to be a 2-year process. This was year 1. We did use the new report cards for term 1 and term 2. As you know, we didn't end up using them for term 3. And we got a lot of feedback of what worked and what didn't work. With staff, we plan to make some changes based on our pilot work this year. And then the new revisions, put that out. And then after the first quarter in November, early December, we're going to be asking for feedback from the community as well. And again, we have students, not students, teachers at all levels on that committee. And that committee has been co-led with Beth Levitt, the Barrows principal, and I have been co-leading that for the last 2 years. And a huge shout out to that team as well. They've done a ton of work, and members of this team have been involved, the building principals have been involved, and I think we have some really nice revisions that more closely align to the work that we're doing in classrooms, but really give parents a better snapshot of what's going on in school and how their child is doing in relationship to the standards. And then the last 2 things I wanted to talk about were about the youth behavior risk behavior survey that we do. We actually took that data, some of which was very positive, and some real gains were made. And Erica did a presentation earlier in this year with the school committee. But we did look at some key areas that we had a lot of work to do. One of which was under the vaping and use of nicotine with vaping products, as well as other things in the vaping pens, and really trying to combat that by doing more proactive work. So I know Erica's done a lot of training at the building levels, especially at the middle school and the high school level, worked with building principals, but we also just had a webinar during our closure that was very well attended, that was put on by some Reading experts as well as members of the coalition, on not only just looking at vaping, what is it, what isn't it, but also really trying to pinpoint how do you stop it? How do you get children and students off of nicotine products? And then the other webinar that was presented last week that was very well attended through the coalition was on supporting healthy teen dating, because that was another data point that came up when we looked at our survey results. So those are some of the curriculum work that has been going on with members of my team as well as myself. So we, as you know, we don't, none of our programs that we use, or our tools as we call them, are a standalone program for curriculum. We call those resources and tools because they're part of the toolbox that teachers offer. So see, these are some of the curriculum resource and tools that may be either new to us this year or enhanced this year. So again, at the 5,000-foot view, we have our social studies curriculum tools. We've added quite a bit and will continue to add quite a bit in pre-K to 12 because all of the curriculum has been revised in the last couple of years. We did middle school math Envision adoption. Algebra 1, we are getting the Envision. These are both the Pearson products. We also did a lot of internal resource supporting with our remote learning tools this year. Edulastic, which is an online assessment platform that we used last year. We're going to continue with that, and I know we've even, Heather did some nice training on that to really extend the use of that. Our data dashboard platform, this was our first year of using it, and it was very successful. And as well as any other additional remote learning tools, of which there have been quite a few this year. The 5,000-foot view on this is a slide that shows one possible dashboard. This is part of the analytics platform that we use. Our data coach, Courtney, does a great job working with our district-wide data teams, working with building leaders and building-level data teams. One of the things that we often spent a lot of time was assembling the data and really building graphs and charts and ways for people to assimilate large amounts of data and use it. And we were able to find this resource. I actually was introduced it in my last role that is done by a company called Analytics Platform, and they work with over 25 districts now. They actually do all of the building using the Google network. They use Google Studio, I believe, to provide all of this. We actually give, Courtney works with them to input some of the data, and then we can look, really, this is an example of all schools MCAS data from last year, and we're able to color code by level. This kind of finite data really helps building principals, and most importantly, classroom teachers be able to see at a glance. So as we do Fountas and Pinnell benchmarking or other district-wide or school-based assessment tools, we're able to put it in this, and teachers can really say, all right, at an eye's glance, how's my class doing? And it's been a very powerful tool. So thank you to Courtney, who isn't on the call tonight, but she has worked really hard on this. A big part of our work is now planning for the next great adventure, whatever that may be. As you know, or you may know, we still don't know what the state is planning for us as far as what will learning look like in the fall. Certainly, we've done a lot of thinking and planning about that. One of the things that John has asked us to do is form a team to really look at continuity of learning, which is a very broad topic. And I'm going to just quickly go over some of the work that we've done. I know that the other teams will also be presenting as well. A couple of weeks ago, we sent out surveys that really asked, like, what went well? What could have gone better? How did you see your students engaged? Those kind of questions. We sent them out to various stakeholders, parents, students grades 4 and up, and teachers. And you can see we got tremendous support in our participation. Once we got those surveys, our continuity of learning team, which included some building level folks at every level, we looked at what worked according to the surveys and with our own personal data and anecdotal information, what could have worked better. And then we really looked at special attention with reviews for recommendations. All of our recommendations and reviews are brought to Dr. Doherty and the central office team for further conversations. But we looked at under the lens of engagement. How do we engage with students and how can we engage with students? What kind of technology supported remote learning and possibly hybrid learning should that develop? And then what kind of professional development do we need? Have we used? What's worked well? So these are just some example comments. These are included in your packet, so I'm not going to read each one of them. The way we conducted the survey, because we were really looking for specific information, most of the questions were open-ended. So kudos to our team. Like my engagement team went through 1,100 parent surveys and 1,100 student surveys to look for trends and thoughts on engagement practices. So it was a lot of looking through each and every survey and really reading them. I included a few comments here that you can take a look at. In addition, we did ask a few 1 to 5 questions, and this is just one snapshot that I thought I would include. Over the last 5 school days, the remote learning provided to my child or children, obviously this was to parents, has been from a 1 to 5, far too challenging is a 1, all the way to 5, not enough. And you can see it kind of represents a bar graph. Obviously, I look at, we want to see more people in the 2s and 3s and 4s, rather than not enough, or really far too challenging as well. We didn't want to stress folks out, but certainly there were a lot of specific comments that really helped support this graph for us. So some of the themes and trends caused us to really have this kind of bullet list of what are we going to look at. Well, we're going to need to define student responsibility for learning, rigor, and hybrid classroom culture. Again, because remote learning was new to most of us, and as I've often said, what we did this spring was really emergency education, not necessarily remote education. We need to do a better job of really helping teachers to craft norms and expectations, as well as understand a little bit more of how engagement looks different in a remote world. And one of the best videos that we actually watched as a team was about teachers' superpowers and how in the classroom we're able to just really quickly scan our class and look for levels of engagement. In a remote world, especially if kids shut off their cameras, that is really hard to assess. So we have to look at other ways to really look for ways to engage so that the learning can continue. We also want teachers to create clear and concise expectations. So for instance, one of the expectations might be that you can't shut off your camera during the 20-minute introduction, and maybe you can if we're showing a PowerPoint or something like that. These are some of the things that we're going to help staff work on, and that obviously we need to provide more professional development for staff. Our second group looked at technology and the use of platforms and tools. And again, here are some quotes from the many surveys. And certainly one of the things that came up as a theme is looking for structure and organization on the online resources. Some of the teachers and parents talked about particular tools that they liked or they didn't like. One of the things that the quote on this that I love is, please recognize and account for the fact that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to virtual learning and have some variation across the different approaches. And I think that's true for all learning. There never is one-size-fits-all, but certainly the feedback will help us guide our next chapter, whatever that shall be. And our technology themes and feedback for our next steps are that we should look at common platforms and tools. We need more training and support, not just for staff, but for families as well. We need to talk more about what synchronous and asynchronous looks like. Across the board, people were looking for more consistency and more of them. More synchronous, which is the live teaching, and definitely more clarity around asynchronous, which would be the recorded or the work assignments, as it were. And we received lots and lots of specific feedback that we continue to cull through it. I've looked through the surveys many times, and every time I find more things. And we are going to be curating or recommending a curation of a list of core tools. Obviously, some schools might use other tools, but it would be nice to say most of our schools are using X or Y. So that is one of the suggestions that we have. And then our last group that we're talking about tonight was on professional development and training. Here are some quotes here. As Heather mentioned, we got quite a few of the quote here. The best PD I received was either from colleagues who were well versed in different platforms or in a small group from an IT person. So, you know, like any professional development that we offer, traditional PD, we want it to be targeted and relevant. And also it's nice when we have in-house experts, so we're going to continue to look for that. And here are some next steps. We're going to continue to survey staff and families as plans develop. We're hoping to create a bank of videos that would support technology. So we did have some drop-in sessions for families on how to use different types of technology, and a huge shout out to our IT department, our ITS members, who did a lot of the training, both Julian Carr's department as well as our integration technology specialists that did a phenomenal job with that, as well as our Reading resident Karen Janowski, who was able to provide us some support along that. We had really a very robust video technology. However, it would be nice to videotape all of them so that they would be easily accessible. One of the things that we talked about was having a system for housing our professional development forms and training modules. We'd like to have a system where all teachers can just go here, log on. We did build an online situation this year, again, out of necessity, but we need to do some more work on having a full system that would allow for us to put everything professional development in one space. And also there was some talk about creating documents for the use of tools, like a one-page how-to, so that families are like, oh, I didn't know how to use that tool. Or students like, I have to do a project and I need to use Screencastify. How would I use that? So those are some specific feedback that was given to us. And what looks like, what is the future ahead? And I would say that as of now, and this is certainly subject to change, we'll continue to work on diversity and equity work. That has been real cornerstone of the work that I've done at a district level in the last 2 years. We're going to be working with district and building leadership and looking at professional development. We already have offered some. We're going to continue to offer more. We're going to continue to work with our professional development team for curriculum upgrades and revisions. We will continue to do curriculum and revision work and planning work with each level. And we definitely will look at specific focus on targeted curriculum needs and critical courses based on what happened this spring. We will complete the curriculum guides at all levels. We also will be looking at providing more differentiated learning professional development in partnership with Jennifer Stice and her team. And obviously every summer we do a re-entry and mentor induction training. So this is all work that we'll be starting to work on throughout the summer and building really a plan for this next school year. So I think that's the whole PowerPoint. And here are our Twitter handles. We tweet a lot. If you haven't checked out our Twitter yet, please do so, as well as our website. We do try to link all of our documents on our website, and we do try to refer people back to that. So I know you probably have some questions.
Thank you, Chris and Allison and Heather. That was excellent. I guess I just have a couple of questions, and I think you may have just answered one of my questions in that second to last slide, and it was really what are we doing in terms of professional development, and so that when the kids are back in the schools, then we can talk about what we've been through, not just COVID-19, but all the things that are going on in the world right now, and have our kids talk to the kids about that, and not wait until it becomes part of a curriculum material or down the road. But is there any resources that are going to be available for staff to do that?
So you're talking about like re-entry towards like a social emotional lens?
Yeah.
So that's actually another team that's been working on all of that. The team that, so I don't even think John's calling it a task force, but the group that's been putting together information and doing research on, what will our re-entry look like. I included my pieces on that because they were specific to our continuity of learning. And this was a snapshot and sort of what did we do prior to March 13th and what did we do afterwards, and now what's the great unknown. There are also other committees. I know John mentioned it at the last school committee meeting. There is a committee on meeting the needs of all learners, our student support team that Jennifer Stice is leading up. There's a social emotional support that I know Jen Allard and Mary Juliana and other people have been, and Lauren Sabella, they've all been working on that. And then there's obviously a team about communication, facilities, all of the PPE stuff, and I know Gail's been working on that. And John works really with all of us. So all four teams, he's been regularly checking in. So yeah, they have a very good idea of how we're going to need to ease not just students, but staff too. One of the things that my team is working on is youth mental health that we do, our training that we do, that mental health first aid that we always do. We train all our new staff in that. That is going full online this year. So Erica McNamara and Lauren Sabella always provide that training, and they'll be switching to an online module. We're also looking for a refresher course so that staff have a little bit, because some staff might have taken that course years and years ago. So we're going to be providing, when we know what our schedule looks like, we'll be providing a refresher course for all staff of what to look for. What do you do when a student may be failing, in a vulnerable place based on the fact that they were isolated for so long. So yeah, we're well in the works of that.
I guess also, I guess maybe, I don't know if we can do it, but I'd like to see or wonder whether we there be something so that not wait for that, but just educate on, you know, what's been happening in the world we live in, and maybe from an educator standpoint, explain it to the at all levels, not just, you know, the younger kids, but even the high school, and you know, because there's so many things that have happened. I mean, it's affected, you know, every walk of life, and business and everything, and you know, they hear it everywhere, and depends on, you know, what channel you turn on, you hear a different opinion. So it'd be nice that, you know, there's some, you know, maybe coordinated effort in teaching that or doing something with that. I don't know whether it's possible, but the other question I had was on the slide that you put up where you get the feedback from the parents, and you know, that showed not enough or too much, or do you have that I'd be interested to know that information by level, as opposed to just an aggregate amount, and not you know, if you don't have it, I'd just be curious.
We don't have it tonight, but Heather, we can do that by level, correct? Yeah.
Yes, we can. Yep.
Because I mean, if we're you know, if we're going into some element of remote learning in the fall, knowing it by level will help us know where we need to put more resources towards. So I'll be quiet. Sean, looks like you're up. Oh, or no, you're talking to Linda.
Yeah, I actually do have a question. Yeah, I was just giving Linda a heads up that she was still sharing, but I do have a question. I know obviously we haven't gotten to the point yet where we're able to do, you know, kind of a retrospective on everything we've learned over the last few months and that kind of thing. But I would imagine there are things, you know, from a curriculum perspective or a PD perspective, that have been, you know, different by necessity, that maybe feel like they're the right way to do things going forward, or that, you know, are an improvement over the way we used to do things. I'm curious what some of those early learnings might be, if there are any.
So let me just get this right. What would we do differently, or what are early learnings that we would bring into like learning and teaching in general?
So there are things that we're doing differently by necessity, right? We may have discovered, hey, this is actually better than the way we used to do it. And even when we can all be back in buildings together and that kind of thing, we're gonna approach this a little bit differently. I'm curious if you've stumbled across any of those types of things at this point.
So
looks like Heather has. At least Heather has.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start, and then if they want to add any more, I think the use of technology, and I know that's a big topic, but I think you know, we had to go pretty quickly, pretty fast with the use of technology, and I think I'm really proud of our teachers, some of which didn't have a whole lot of technological background. I think we grew, you know, if you talk about a school year in, you know, 4 months, we grew like years in 4 months. So I think when you hear that term like project-based learning or flipped classroom, I think so many of our teachers did such great jobs with that I think it will be easy for them to just, that's now how we do things. So really looking for projects that hook kids. The use of technology in general, getting people, I mean, and I would imagine business is the same way, right? Getting all the people in the room to do the things. Sometimes that's great, and I think I miss it. I know you probably do as well, but there is a lot to it at times. So I think even just using this virtual conferencing tools, I think is going to really help us collaborate in ways that we haven't before. Right before remote learning started, our district, I became aware that we had Teams, so I hadn't really even used it until March 13th, and now we're prolific with that, and we'll be adding to it with the Zoom. I just think it changes the way we do things. It'll be so much easier to connect with people in multiple resources. Even silly little things. I was able to participate on a couple of hiring teams, and even just being able to get a lot of stakeholders together to do interviews. Really tricky at times. much easier in this remote world. So I do think that from a technological standpoint, we're not going to go back. Like, they're just things that we do better. Heather, Allison, do you want to say anything?
Sure. You saw me nodding emphatically.
I did.
I think a couple of the things that popped up that I think are really powerful for us as educators to consume, and I don't know that I could say for sure what it would look like in the end, but something we saw frequently occurring in the student surveys was their ability to do some of their own pacing, like a chance to work on things at their own pace or at separate times. I mean, and that's really speaking to that personalized learning opportunity. So what does that look like? A lot of teachers found when there was a range of choices for how you respond to things, they saw some levels of creativity they might not have seen before. Some of the teachers mentioned participation looking different. Some students really surprised them because they could participate in a way that felt maybe a little more comfortable. And others who maybe participated more frequently, that having everybody look at you on a screen felt intimidating or felt different. So I think learning too, while it connects to the potential, should we have to have ongoing virtual learning, I think a lot of it can also be translated to good classroom teaching and practice as well. And another one I think that I'm hoping we can continue to foster and support is watching the teachers sharing across, and when they had some really good, whether it's strategies or resources or even like lessons, that they were actually putting things up. I know one fourth grade teacher, I'm just thinking of an example, built this beautiful science lesson, and she's like, I don't know if it's good enough. I was like, it's phenomenal. And so she was sharing it with some of her colleagues across district. And, you know, while we want to make sure we're having common experiences in the standards, but allowing teachers to personalize their learning to their classroom, the more we can share really rich and engaging lessons, I mean, that just benefits everyone. So those are some, the more we can continue to build that opportunity, I think is beneficial for everyone.
John?
Thank you.
Oh, John Parks?
Yeah, actually, Chris, Allison, and Heather, thank you very much for all the work. I know it's been a mountain to climb since March, and the work you've done is amazing. Hopefully an easy question. Do you see any current roadblocks that are in your way, whether it be for PD or things that this committee needs to know about that we can push to assist with?
So I think the current roadblock is knowing what the schedule is going to be like for the fall. So if you could just wave your magic Desi wand and get that to happen, I think we're really poised to start. John setting up these teams, they're real. I sat in on another teams meeting today. Unbelievable, some of the work that's been done already. We're kind of like ready to go. So I think we have looked at some remote learning tools and resources so that if we need to continue with the hybrid approach or at some point in the year we have to go remote, we have some of those tools available with us. I honestly, at this point, I feel like once we know what the plan is, then we may come back to this committee. But we've tried to really be mindful of our curriculum dollars and our resources so that we're planning a nimble path. Should we need, we don't want to do everything remote or everything not remote. We have some options, and now, at least now, we know what we're doing. Again, emergency education, this remote world, was new to most of us. We can only get better at it because we've learned what works and frankly what doesn't work as well as it needs to. I feel like we have some good feedback and some good resources, and we've done a lot of research in what other districts and schools have done. Some schools only operate this way, so we've done a lot of work there. But yeah, no, thank you for the question, John. I think we're in good shape once we know what Desi tells us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aaron, you're on mute.
Sorry.
Okay.
I have several questions, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
First off, thank you for the presentation. It was really helpful to get sort of the overview of everything that has been happening behind the scenes all this time. I knew a lot of it, but I certainly didn't know all of it. So I appreciate you going through all of that. I especially liked everything that you were saying about teachers across the district working together across grade level. I felt like that was something that did come up a lot this spring about some of the differences happening, and it just never quite made sense to me because I know we have so much talent in the district, and I just love the idea of people being able to share their talents and other teachers being able to benefit. So I do hope that that is something that can continue. So one of my questions was, I know that we ended with students either getting a pass or like, I think pass incomplete, we were calling it. So what is happening with the students who got pass incomplete?
So that, I guess that's a question I can answer. So in talking to the middle school principals and the high school principal, all students are passing. So, you know, if we are in a remote environment in the fall, we've already heard from DESE that grades will be issued. So we will be back into a traditional grading situation. This spring, again, because we had so many other things and other factors to really consider, most districts, ours being one of them, most of our local districts, we all decided to do a pass, and complete, which meant basically pass means like, of course you passed and you got most of the work done. Pass and complete means you passed, but you may not have finished all the work. One of the things that I know that the middle school principals have done is they want to make sure that those assignments and those kiddos are on their radar. They are still passing, and we want to continue to work with those families so that any of the essential skills that may not have been worked on in this spring, there were some families that decided that remote learning wasn't for them and they were going to do other things. We wanted them to know that, yes, they're still passing, but they didn't complete the assignments the school gave. Now, some of those assignments were just assignments, right? Teachers assign all kinds of things. Some assignments may be critical information that they may need more practice in order to take the next year's grade. So that's the kind of conversations that they're having at the building and the team level. And frankly, our principals are really tracking that so that we can provide that support. But everyone is passing. We didn't really feel like as a district we wanted to say, you know, every situation is different. Some families have been ravaged by COVID. Some families have had loss of incomes. Some didn't have the right technology support. We really wanted to have a level playing field, and I feel like we did provide that. But we also want to be mindful that some of these skills, you know, they don't just like disappear, right? So we're going to pay close attention to that, and those kiddos that need that extra support, those teams, it's really not even, you know, at the principal level, the teams will be focused on that for when we return. So they'll say, all right, well, this child really didn't do any of the assignments. What are some of the essential skills that may need some further work so that they can be successful next year? And that's a lot of the curriculum work that we're going to have to do as well.
Yeah, I think, Chris, if you don't mind if I add, that our team has been really adamant, I guess. It's a strong word. I don't mean it so strongly, but we've been really focused on the idea that we're not working from a deficit model when we come back in the fall, that we're going to focus on where everyone is and moving forward rather than focusing on what was missed or what should have been or that kind of thinking, that we're really trying to foster this idea of it's all okay and we're going to move forward from here. We're not going to, I don't want to say we're not going to worry about it, but we're not going to pretend like everyone learned the same way during March, April, May, and June of 2020. So I think that's something that we're very much aware of, how we're framing things when we're talking to principals and teachers and families too.
If I can tag the last bit onto that question too, Erin. So to follow that next step, so following from the student to the teaching team to the sort of district-wide curriculum work, a big piece of what we've done as well is collect data about what standards were taught fully and completely to mastery while we were still brick and mortar, what standards were covered, reviewed, or exposed to while we were out, and which ones were not done at all based on recommendations from the state. And then the next step is now we have that information, so the receiving team knows where those students, what the level of experience, at least from the teacher provided, was. And our work now is taking that curriculum and designing it so that we're not having, you know, our 5th grade teachers teaching 3 months of 4th grade. Instead, they're teaching their 5th grade units, but what we're doing is highlighting these critical skills might have been reviewed during the remote learning period, which means you can have a variety of exposure. So strategically planning both ways to assess where students are and ways that we can provide them opportunities for additional practice so that when they're entering into that content, we're not making assumptions about where anybody's experience was. For some students, they were able to do more. For some, they didn't do any. So, and frankly, that's typical, but we just have another layer of a challenge this year. So we actually can highlight and identify those within our curriculum planning. We've collected that curriculum data for the different levels so that plays into our planning for next year for all students.
Thank you for mentioning. Heather was part of that group's mission in our continuity of learning. So she's been working with the middle school and high school leaders on that as well. Did you have another question, Erin?
I do.
Yeah.
So sort of in that same vein, knowing that, you know, this spring, not 100% of the grade level standards were able to be addressed, and looking at what some of the models could potentially be for next year, one of the things that leaps out to me, you know, as a parent and as a school committee member is how is all the curriculum going to get in next year? So when you're planning, and this isn't even, I don't need to know this level of detail yet, but are you looking at how are you going to get a year's worth of curriculum in, knowing there is a little bit of catch up that's going to have to happen. Obviously the curriculum overall will shift, but you know, some of these hybrid models, I can't wrap my brain around how a whole curriculum fits into that. So I'm just wondering how that's getting factored into the planning, I guess.
So Heather, yeah, I was going to say, Heather, why don't you, because you started to address that, so maybe you could continue to explain that a little bit for Erin.
Sure. I think the difference we have now is that we know, right? We know that there's the potential and we can strategically plan for it. When we plan our curriculum, I mentioned it briefly when I was talking about the science PD. Our curriculum is built upon the standards and framework given us by the state and our curriculum tools and resources that we have. But what really matters is the delivery method, right? How are we strategically planning for students to engage with the content, to practice and build their skills? And how and when are we building those opportunities? And that really is where how we're doing it now. We know that there might be a potential for some remote learning, for some brick and mortar, that it might change. So we can plan to know which things are really critical that we're doing live with students, which are things that they would typically be released to do independent practice in the classroom anyway, which are things that they might be collaborating on that are really rich on a virtual setting, which are ones we need that whole class dialogue. And that strategic planning, when we know and can plan forward for it, it just changes the game a bit. So I think, you know, I would caution us about thinking about covering a curriculum, because I think that leads us to touching on subjects. And what we know, frankly, is it's really about engaging in the learning, having conversations, experiences that let you build your own knowledge and understanding, making mistakes in a place that we get to have rich conversations and learn from those, and engaging with peers. And those are the pieces, like how do we ensure that the things that are really difficult to replicate virtually, we're providing those opportunities when brick and mortar. So when they might be in a virtual opportunity, they're maybe reinforcing, practicing in a way that might be appropriate. So I think it's really more about knowing ahead and identifying what are those critical components in person, what are virtual, and then how are we planning for that. And it might look different in ages, it might look different in content, and it might look different depending on which part of the year you're in, you know, so and that all plays into it. But I think the big piece is knowing our teachers are experts and now having lived this experience and opportunity, looking forward and knowing what worked well virtual, what was not great to replicate, and then also knowing what are those critical areas in our curriculum that you can't just do virtually, and how do we then plan around that. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Heather.
So helpful. Thank you so much. My last question is whether the results of this particular survey are going to be made available to the public.
So most of this survey were open-ended questions, Erin. So I don't think we planned on releasing that. I think some of the snapshots that Chuck Robinson mentioned, we could release some of that. We'll have to go through and see what could be easily understood, because 1,100 separate comments. We did look for trends and for themes, but I'll tell you, it took a whole team of people to do that. And you know, we did take out personal names and things like that. But I do think that that probably wouldn't be what the public would be looking for. I think they may be looking for more like that slide that I showed you with the bar graph. So let me talk to my team in July, once we get through ordering and all of that. And then we'll take a look at what we think makes sense. Not that we're not trying to release things, but we specifically wrote the surveys to have tons of open responses so that we could get specifics. That is not easy to do from a data, view. So, and we did it on purpose because we needed that kind of detail of, what people actually thought, not just on a scale from 1 to 10. Scale from 1. We looked at a lot of other districts and the surveys they had done, and Heather was like, this isn't going to tell us what we want. Like, we need more specifics. So we feel good about the results we got because it gave us a lot of really detailed responses.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Carla?
Great, thank you. Chris, Heather, and Allison, thank you so much for all the work that you've done and the information that you provided. It was really helpful. You answered a lot of my questions. Erin asked a couple of my questions, which was really concerning me in terms of how the fall gets rolled out, however that looks. I wanted to kind of leapfrog either forward or backwards, however you want to look at it, to a non-COVID time with all of the grade levels, with all of the curriculum that you have to touch, right, and be involved with and push along. Can you just talk to me about your philosophy on how you prioritize your year, knowing that you have so much to do, kind of how you attack that? If, for example, in the fall we were going back to a typical year, what is your philosophy and how do you prioritize what your job is for the year, so to speak?
So I'll start at sort of the 5,000 foot view, and then Heather and Allison can talk about pre-K to 8. Because we have had a lot of curriculum work to do in the last couple of years, we've prioritized of what has been done and what hasn't been done, right? So that was number one. I think number two, we looked at the either revised standards or the new standards at the state level. That is it's sort of a non-negotiable. So for instance, when social studies standards came out, we had to regroup and reform. Next year, the world language, which formerly the artist formerly known as foreign language, will be published, and we're going to have to do some curriculum work on that as well. So those, as we prioritize, we look at that. What is the state telling us? What kind of differences do we have to do based on state, expectations or revisions? And then the third thing is like, what are either tools that need to be looked at, because maybe what we used already isn't, I'll give you an example, the math 7-8 that we used, because they used Flash, and Flash no longer lives in technology. I'm right? It was Flash, no?
Just not grade 7-8, it was
okay.
Different.
Oh, okay. So maybe algebra, algebra. We had to really look at a different tool for our curriculum. That, had that been a priority before? Maybe not. But once we realized that the current tool we used really wasn't going to be able to be used in the way that we needed it to be, that became a priority. So as far as how do we prioritize funding, that often is the way. Heather and Allison can talk about how we prioritize time, because I think they've done a really good job of looking at like those Wednesday workshops, as well as the full day trainings, because we can't pull teachers out of classrooms very often, right? And those Wednesdays are sacred. We don't have that many. And at the middle school and high school, most of them are building based, and the Wednesday district-wide, the elementary meetings that we have, we try to really be mindful about how we plan them. So I'll let them talk a little bit more. I know they mentioned it a little bit, but that's how they prioritized what they did. But as far as from a district level, we definitely look at, does this tool still work for us? Is the state asking us to change things? Those are kind of the priorities that we look at. The other thing is, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that we also look under the lens of what do our students need? What are they telling us? And what do our staff need as far as professional development? A lot of energy and work has been done on continuing to build our toolbox and looking at cultural proficiency as well as social emotional learning. And that's going to be ongoing. I think I could be retired 20 years and we'd still be talking about those things. So Heather, Allison, did you want to add to that?
Sure. We can go, interrupt me, Heather, if you want. We don't have to go one at a time, but I think for me, we have a couple of big buckets, if you will, of what our big picture of our year, professional learning for staff, curriculum tools and resources that may or may not need to be vetted or investigated or purchased, and then sort of curriculum revisions like Chris was saying. Maybe the data is telling us something, maybe our assessments are telling us something, maybe there's like new standards being released, like Chris said about social studies. So those are sort of the drivers. And then, even this time last year, Heather and I were sitting thinking about what do we want our Wednesdays to look like? And that's where this sort of differentiated plan grew from. And how do we want PD for teachers? What do we want people to be focused on? What's going to be really meaningful? Where have teachers at certain grade levels not been able to spend a lot of time? And so I think that sort of helps us long-term plan of where do we want to be, in June of 2021. And we just sort of work backwards from there, taking the time that we have, that we know is built in, using that wisely, and then figuring out where do we need to make time, create time, buy time. So yeah, I think it comes from a lot of different places, and it changes as we have seen this year. Yeah. Heather, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think when we're talking pre-COVID, I think that the combination of what we're hearing from the state, what our data is telling us we need, both what we're doing well, we want to continue to do and replicate, and where are areas that we need to focus, and whether it's a curriculum tool or resource that because it's expiring, because we're not seeing the benefits from it, or a methodology, a teaching routine and structure that would feed into both PD and potential acquiring and procurement of resources. And then also, what is the district improvement plan looking like? What are we seeing at trends across different school levels? Because that varies as well. And what are we seeing that we need there? So all of that data plays in, and then the things go hand in hand. What you spend, frankly, money is incredibly precious, but time is even more so in schools. So what are you investing in fiscally, and then what are you investing your time in with your teachers directly translates to what that is being focused on in classrooms. So and it does look different both year to year, and then also what we see in the summer does sometimes change, both based on what we're seeing from data and assessments, but then also what we're hearing back from staff and teachers. And so we try hard to make sure we're meeting those goals that the district has established, meeting the expectations that the state has put out for us, and also being as responsive as we can to students and teachers, just like we hope our teachers are doing in their classrooms to their students and their groups.
And one other caveat to that is, as we do any professional development or any curriculum committee work, we always ask for feedback from staff. So we're constantly regrouping as a team to reflect on that, what worked well, what could have worked better, those kind of things. And I think in the last 2 years, we've continued to just adapt and change. We'll continue to do that.
Thank you, ladies.
All right, Tom?
Good evening. Hopefully I can be seen and heard. So I'll add my thanks to the thanks that everybody else has already given. And I have a couple of questions to add on to the ones that have already been done. Some of them will be on the current vein that we're talking about in terms of COVID-19 and response, but then I also have quite a few on some of the other materials that were part of your presentation. So I'll start with where we are right now. And in the survey that you all did, and the textual comments that came back, you pulled out some key themes that you saw there, and in looking through them, and some, wording was put in the presentation that was very good to see. Have you considered, in alignment with some of the questions that were done before, and sorry, Chris, I'm going to move this to my mouth so you can hear better. Have you considered doing some sort of sentiment analysis or a word cloud, so that you're not giving away necessarily the comments by individuals that could disclose privacy information, but would also give much more information to the public, as Aaron's question was going towards, in terms of what was in the substance. In the 1,100 survey results from parents, 1,100 survey results from kids, 200 survey results from teachers, can we do some sort of sentiment analysis, word cloud type analysis that we can share with the public that shows where things are and what the feedback generally was?
Sure. I mean, we hadn't really thought of that, doing a sentiment analysis, and certainly we've done a lot with word clouds, so we could certainly look into that. We definitely want to make sure, as you said, that privacy, people gave very specific details, and I think, again, there's a lot of them, but yeah, we could definitely look at ways to communicate that.
I think the one piece too, as we're looking at this qualitative collection, is thinking about, if we're coding it, what we want to be careful of is not assuming that the frequency of certain terms indicates a leaning, right? So somebody might say, I loved this, I hated this, and that word might come up frequently, but it's not necessarily indicating trends. So if we're doing the coding within that qualitative piece, I think it'd be really critical that it's not simply a numeric translation, but yet then, that actual level of analysis and presentation would have to be something that then has gone through, by the human coder to translate, to actually look for, are we seeing trends towards the positive, towards the negative, towards the neutral within some of these themes. So, I think that layer of analysis is definitely helpful, was done by the small group teams to pull out the themes that indicated their next steps, but certainly is then something that could be put back into place. It would just take a bit of time to go back into them to create something publicly consumable. Not impossible, but just want to caution that it's not as simple as, the frequency of occurrence.
Yeah, I think we need to look at time too, because as we find out what our fall is going to look like, we have a lot of things that need to be done. So certainly we could look at what could be publicly consumable, as Heather mentioned, that is understandable.
Yeah, I was just thinking along the lines of some of the Google Analytics tools that you can do with machine learning, sentiment analysis related stuff there that you could do. It's not just single word, it can be phrase, it can be other things along those lines that can lead towards the positive, negative, neutral, as you're saying, Heather. Very, very true and very, very important there. My next question would be as well in alignment with Chuck's question, where he asked about whether we have it by grade in terms of the scores of 1 through 5, yeah, and whether the content was too much.
We didn't have it by grade. I believe it was by level. Am I right, Heather?
So it differed depending on which survey. We asked more general level bands for parents and for teachers, and we did ask grade level for student.
Okay, I purposely did not answer it because I wanted my bias to stay out of it, and I had my wife answer it instead. So do we have the ability to look at it by school? Can we see, this came from Parker, this came from Coolidge, this came from the high school, this came from one of the elementaries, to see if there's a trend amongst any one of those?
Yeah, not cleanly, because some parents pick, so we have some parents who have students at 3 or 4 different schools, possibly. So, I know there was one that had like a rise, had an elementary and had a high school. And so some of their comments were more collective. So we hypothetically, we could try, but you can't do it in a clean way that really maintains the integrity of the data.
Okay, thank you for that. Now I'm going to switch gears here a little bit. Maybe on the easy question first, then I'll go to the maybe more difficult question. In your planning for 20 and 21 and beyond slide, Chris and Heather and Allison, one of the things I think that's missing there, and maybe it's because we still haven't heard from Desi, but that's what I'm curious about. I think this group had been the one who had addressed it in the past, is the dyslexia screener. It's not listed there. Maybe it's just because Desi's not ready for it because of everything that's gone on with COVID. But is that on your plate right now? Is it something you're aware of? Is it something we're still planning for?
So you're right, DESE has not released more information. We've been waiting for it all spring, and I just heard recently that they don't plan on releasing anything to mid to late summer. But we do have a plan for this next year. We're going to do an early literacy screener for kindergarten and first grade.
Oh, we already do an early literacy screener.
Okay, Allison, please, yes.
Yeah, so because we don't want to get ahead of the state and allocate funds to something that then ends up going, the state gives us a different recommendation, and we still have been waiting years now for those recommendations. But so we are going to hopefully or definitely implement a screener for all students in K1. So a different screener than what we've been using in the past, which has been a battery of different subtests. So that's what we have typically done. So for next year, we're going to try a different assessment that's on the DESE recommended list, and we're going to see if that meets our needs, if it's something that we want to move forward with, because we think that in the meantime, it'll give us now time to sort of see if this is something that we want to continue with, or if we want to investigate a different tool. And so yes, it's very much something we're talking about. It's very much alive and well, and we're working, we're moving on it. So, yeah.
Okay. Are you able to share the name of that, or is that being held back because of negotiations or anything else like that? The name of the new tool, Allison.
Chris.
So yeah, I mean, we
just haven't told staff.
We haven't told our staff yet, Tom. So I rather them publicly not find out right now. But yes, we just worked out a contract with
just today, actually.
Just today, a vendor that we have used in the past for other work with targeted intervention, but not the one that was piloted through the state last year. I will say that it's not that one. But I would rather talk to the principals and let them know first. So we were able to work on the quote. Thank you, Allison and Heather, among other things, work very hard at getting us best possible deals with every vendor. So anyway,
Okay.
and Gail's team is been working overtime getting all of this done. So.
You beat me to the punch on asking the question about iStation, so
Yeah, it's not iStation.
Not iStation.
that answers that portion of the question.
Yep.
My last set of questions is around the middle school math pilot and choice of solutions. I think this is the first time we're officially hearing that news, that it was Envision 2.0 that's being chosen. And I was also surprised to see that we've chosen Envision AGA for Algebra 1, as I had gone back and looked at the October materials, and I thought Algebra 1 was out of scope for the pilot and the selection as of this year. But maybe I misunderstood what was presented and what was stated in that statement. So my first question, I guess, on this front is, and this goes along with some of the conversations and questions I had asked before. Envision 2.0 itself, from a middle school perspective, is not rated anywhere. It's not rated by EdReports. It's not rated by Curate. And so I think we had said...
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Tom. I actually want to... It's not Envision 2.0. It's Envision Math Common Core, and it is on EdReports. Okay. They've rated the K5. The 678 is in line and has been, but it's the copyright 2020, so it's going to be more similar to the Envision Florida Mathematics. Copyright 2020, it's not 2.0, so I'm sorry for that confusion.
Okay. The material said 2.0, that's why I had looked at that and said that, so that's good to say. Good to know, because that one is rated very strongly. So thank you for sharing that, Heather. Because that was my concern, is that we were picking a tool that was quite poorly rated. Envision 2.0 was. But Envision, like you say, Florida was very highly rated, Common Core was very highly rated. At least by EdReports. Curate hasn't gotten there yet, but that's okay. I'm sure with some of your help, it will get there soon enough. So thank you with that.
Curate's actually not going to review anything that EdReports has already done. That's what I heard, just in case that little tidbit is helpful.
That's okay. Well, that's new news if that's the case. They may have changed stance because there's certainly things out there they've reviewed that EdReports has reviewed. The next question, I guess, would be that Algebra 1.
Yeah, I can answer.
The addition of that, but before you answer that, Chris, part of my question as well is the alignment of Algebra 1 with Geometry and Algebra 2. And we have not changed those two curriculum tools as of yet, at least as far as I understand. So can we talk a little bit about that? The selection of Envision AGA for Algebra 1, which is very strongly rated, so thank you for that as well. You guys are doing a great job there. And when are we going to look at Geometry and Algebra 2?
So Heather, do you want to start with that? Okay, why don't you start and then I'll pop into the, cute talk. I'll pop into the second part.
Sure. Oh, hi, Doug. Yeah, so the work, I know I had shared the process and the work we had done. There was the pilot of the 2 different programs that came out rated highest based on the work. And the use of the ed reports is absolutely a critical piece of any analysis that we're doing. It is not the only, but it is an important piece. And additionally, the rubrics that were utilized, both for the process that I worked on with the middle school and then also the one that the department head in the high school utilized to select the algebra, utilized a rubric that's based on the Curate rubric that's designed by the state. So while it takes a bit longer for the state to get together, they are looking for people to participate in that process so that they can review more materials. We did utilize a rubric that is based on the Curate rubric as well to make sure we're thinking critically about those components. The algebra piece, so the reason that we were looking for a curricular tool in grade 7 and 8 was because Pearson had been gifting us the access to their digits curriculum, which is based within their platform that they were starting to phase out as they've upgraded and moved on to other curriculum tools that were continuing and providing newer copyrights in an ongoing way. The algebra was tied in with that as well. So the Algebra 1 curriculum that had been used was something that the company, I think it's called Savas now, formerly known as Pearson. They are no longer updating that platform for Algebra 1. So the reason that came into line, as we mentioned before, what takes priority, this is one of those that publisher decided they're no longer going to update that. So the online platform, the tools, any additional curricular resources that the Algebra 1 teachers would be using would be phased out, would no longer be updated, and would soon not be accessible. So that expedited their need to look. And Allison Williams, the department head, utilized some of the same structures and routines that we did of looking at, the different platforms, utilizing the rubric to analyze the tool. I'm sure Chris can speak to that a little more, but the reason that the Algebra 1 ended up being examined, it was not done during the same process as the 7-8. It was actually done as a separate process led by the high school department head in concert with the 8th grade algebra teachers, so that it happened to be in the same year, but it was not done in the same time. So you're right, it wasn't something that we just added it in. It was something that the department head at the high school led that process. So I can pass it to Chris to speak to that.
So as Heather said, we had an expedited process with that because we also, knowing that remote learning, it might be on the table in some way, shape, or form, having that online piece that is applicable and available was hugely important. We couldn't wait on that. In answer to your question for geometry and algebra 2, I talked to Allison Williams today about that exact conversation. We are going to be buying new tools for algebra 2 and geometry first and then algebra 2. But frankly, not right away. Knowing that we're going to be using that new tool, we will be ready to go as soon as we put a committee together, look at tools for geometry. Hopefully, I mean, we've had really good luck with the Envision, which version was it that you said? The Common Core version?
Common Core Copyright 2020.
Copyright 2020. And as Heather mentioned, not only do we look at ed reports and curate it if applicable, if it's not in ed reports, but we also, and I think I've mentioned this before, Tom, we create our own rubric where we look for certain benchmarks. We use the same model as ed reports. So anytime we look at any tool, we always look at that. So we definitely, Allison is definitely excited about the Algebra 1 tool. We will be doing professional development work with them this summer and before school starts, so that we can really have a robust online platform. That's really what we were looking for. We also, of course, got the hardcover books, which was awesome. So that contract just got settled, I think, yesterday or today. again, Allison Williams worked really hard with that, and Gail and her team really are expediting that. As far as Algebra 2 and Geometry, those are definitely on our radar. Those tools are outdated. Our Algebra 2 book, in addition, is an old resource, so that's definitely something, Geometry as well. It's definitely something that we will be working on as funding allows. Hopefully, do Geometry next 2021, 2021, and then the following year, Algebra 2. So within 3 years, that's usually what it takes. It takes about 3 years to do a whole curriculum review and cycle. Oh, so Tom,
Okay.
are you back?
I heard most of it. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I caught most of that. So thank you, and I apologize.
No, that's
my
fine.
connectivity seems to have gone south. Just one point for this is not a question. It's just a point of note here is per policy IGD. Our acceptance of this report constitutes our adoption of the curriculum choices that you are proposing. There's no vote that we have to make here necessarily, but I just wanted to note that by accepting, quote unquote, this report, we are accepting the proposals that you're putting forward here for Envision, Common Core, and Envision AGA. So again, thank you for that.
All right. Well, it was a team effort. I mean, a lot of work has been done behind the scenes to look at a lot of curriculum.
I guess actually, Chuck, I have one more question real quick, especially with all these new curriculum purchases, and I'm going to tie back COVID-19 back into this. Do we think we're going to have physical books to hand out to kids for September if we're going to be in a remote or hybrid type environment? Or are we going to expect them to? Let's start with math for now, since that's what we were just talking about. But I can imagine the same thing with science and a few other things, that we might need physical books as part of this if they're in a hybrid type environment. And I know we had issues this year, in particular with math, where we did not have enough books to give out to kids. So
thank you. Yes, we do intend to use tools. If a teacher is using tools in a remote environment, we plan on having those tools available. It depends on subject and grade. Some of the resources are strictly online. However, the particular situation you mentioned was with Algebra 2, and we actually just found a vendor today where we could get some of those books. So we will have enough so that every student will have an Algebra 2 book resource. I think they don't use it for every chapter. A lot of the stuff that they do is online or things that teachers have created. But when they do need certain chapters of a certain book, we wanted to make sure we had enough on hand. So we did find a vendor today. So yes, we do fully intend, especially at the high school, to have books. But we are going to be heavily looking at online resources. So for instance, the new Algebra 1 books, we have enough books for every student who's taking Algebra 1 in 8th and 9th grade. But we also are going to be relying heavily on the very robust online support and practices. And I mean, these new textbooks have so much. And the online subscriptions come with the purchase of the books, as well as the middle school. National Geographic has a robust online presence. And we also ordered some history books at the high school with an online presence. So yeah, I mean, we plan on having books, but we also are going to heavily rely on that online component that makes that engagement piece really rich.
It is different at the different levels. The 7th, 7-8 accelerated in 8th grade mathematics, based on the way the teachers use the materials and the resources, they're not planning to have a one-to-one hardcover book for every student, because a lot of what they're using is they'll pull certain pieces of it, but it can create confusion when what most of the companies have done now is they've put most of their energy and time into the digital platform and the digital textbooks, because that is current, it's continually updated, and it's something that they control and manage, and most schools are moving towards that. So because of that, the old school method of having like a hardcover textbook and then like a consumable workbook, a lot of publishers have done away with that. Yeah. So the current books that go with these programs are these large books that embed that formally like hardcover textbook, your reference book, with your consumable workbook, and they put it all together. And so it's no longer something that like you have like a textbook and then you have your notebook or other worksheets. So given that, the teachers, after experiencing the pilot and being asked, what would you utilize with students, they said, both for costs and then for usability, they would prefer to utilize the online platform and digital platform. There will be available copies of the textbooks for students should a student require it based on a 504 and IEP need or other circumstances that might prevent them from accessing the digital textbook. But that choice was made based on the teachers' experiences, and that was a unanimous feedback from the middle school teachers teaching 7, 8, and 8. So again, it depends on the content and the level, certainly, but we would never prevent someone from having access should they need it.
You all set, Tom?
Yeah, I think so. Again, I got cut off in most. I heard the last part of Heather's statement, and it sounds like she was going to address the one part of the question I was going to ask, which was an equity question. Those kids who don't have quite the internet bandwidth necessary or the tools necessary, but it sounds like she addressed that already. So
yeah. Additionally, the teachers do have the capacity to print anything that they would be utilizing online as well. So they have access to assign digitally through a Google Classroom type platform to print themselves. And so it could be something as well that both we could have a copy of the text should a student need it or rely on it, and we could also print and edit anything that's available. So it's a really great, incredibly flexible access. So thanks for
Thank you for clarifying that, Heather. All right, any other questions?
I think that was it. Chris and Heather and Allison, thank you. That you did an excellent job. Good presentation.
Well, I just want to echo Heather and Allison just do a tremendous amount of work for the district and for all. I mean, we look at every adult learner in the district as our students, and they're really an incredible resource to our district. So I appreciate their partnership and their teamwork. We really work well together. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, school committee.
Good night.
Thanks.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Okay, we're going to have the presentation on the surplus property.
All right, so this may not be as riveting
Yeah.
as the curriculum update. So typically what we do is twice a year, we go through all of the various levels and have the principals and teachers and everyone sort of take stock of what's in the building. As I'm sure everyone knows, space is at a premium. So to the extent we have furniture, equipment, or whatnot that is broken or damaged that we're currently replacing, we want to make sure we declare it as surplus so that as part of the summer work, we can get it removed and make room as teachers move around and we get new equipment and furniture in. So in the packet is the list we pulled together now. Basically, after all of the teachers came in, cleaned out their classrooms, we were able to get an inventory of it. I do anticipate that in the fall, we'll have another round of this, mainly as we go through and replace more so the technology side. The first item on the list is the one that I'll more focus a little bit on because the rest of them are relatively routine. As you know, as part of the capital money, we are going through and replacing the various phone systems through some of the schools that have had the phone systems in place for many, many years. So this year we replaced the Birch Meadow phone system. We just finished that work over the past couple of weeks. It did get delayed a little bit with COVID. We had it all planned to do, and then when the building shut down, we weren't able to have all of the consultants in to do the work. So they've been able to get in as the restrictions were being lifted. So we are looking to declare that as surplus. We've basically gone through it and salvaged any of the material we can. The other items that we have in here is really just furniture that we went through that's broken, damaged, that we can no longer repair it or sort of hold it together. And then when it becomes a hazard to have in the classrooms, we look to declare it. We also take the approach that any books or material, whether they were purchased with district funds, grant funding, or through PTO donations, as the books get worn, most of these at Wood End or in the library, we do also want to declare that as well, just in full transparency as we're doing that. So we are looking to have school committee approve it. Anything that isn't damaged or a hazard, we do go through a process where we offer it up to other town entities. So we'll reach out to the library to see if they can use any of it. And then we will offer it up to other school districts as well. So we do have a pretty thorough process we go through.
Okay, is there a motion?
Yes, sir, Chuck. This is Tom. Motion to declare the items listed in the Chief Financial Officer's memorandum dated June 18th, 2020 as surplus property.
Second, this is Sean.
Second by Sean. Gail, how is this list different than, shouldn't we have done this at town meeting?
These actually have no salvage value associated with it. So if it has no value, we do not have to go through that process. So we do follow the process. I want to say it was either in November or last April that the town changed the process and the threshold of items. If we had, so last year when we go to declare the courier's car, if that has a salvage value, that would go through town meeting. But all of this is really, there's no dollar value associated with it.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have one.
Carla?
Thanks. Gail, quick question on at the high school with the art furniture.
Yeah.
Is that because we can't use that furniture anymore, or?
Yeah, the reason, that's a good point, Carla. Thank you. I should have pointed that one out as well. So we are moving classrooms around at the high school. We've been working very closely with the principal, Kate Boynton, as well as Jen Stiles, because we do have a large group of students moving up from the middle school to the high school in a couple of the special education programs. So we're rearranging several of the departments and classrooms. So as we went through and looked at it and looked at the population, those classrooms are being repurposed and we don't have a need for them or a place to store them. So we worked very closely with Kate to really limit the number of items that we are. So that is one instance that I do anticipate another school district will scoop those up.
So does that mean the art class is not going to take place?
No, that they are still taking place. I think they're just looking at some of the furniture and whatnot that may not have been being utilized as it was, but because the classrooms had more space in them, they had kept the furniture in there, but now that folks are moving around, we worked very closely with Anna Wentland as well. So they sent the list. I will say it probably took a couple of weeks to scrub it to really make sure we weren't being short-sighted to declare it and then have to purchase it again in a year. So we worked very closely, and we also worked to keep things that we knew we would need that we can put in other classrooms for now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, ready for the vote. Carla?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Chuck? Aye. Thank you, Gail.
Great.
And you're still up.
I'm still up. This one will be even more riveting. So what I like to do is, now that town meeting, nice that we had the one and done, approved the fiscal 21 budget, even though this is what was approved by Finance Committee. I did want to bring it back so that the school committee can give its actual vote on it, because this is different than what the school committee approved. But this does reflect what the Finance Committee approved, which were our proposed cuts, but adding back the payroll HR position as well as the COLA increases. So very thankful that the committee, Finance Committee and town meeting all agreed to add those back. So This is the same chart that we had presented, just reflecting those changes. And we wanted to make sure we could take an official vote so that when we start next year, we're all on the same page with it. And this is the process for those of you who were on the committee last year, that I always try to come back right at the end of the year to have the final budget approved. So this shows it in total as well as by each cost center.
Okay, can we get a motion first?
Yes, sir. Tom Wise, the motion says, move to approve the final FY21 budget of $48,322,662 as appropriated by town meeting, as well as approval of the individual cost center budgets.
Second.
Second.
Seconded by Sean. Does anybody have any questions for Gail? Okay, seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote. Carla?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Chuck? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you. And as we've done in the past, especially going into sort of an uncertain area, as we learn more about what the fall will look like, we will keep the committee updated, because this was sort of based upon what we knew at the time. So we will keep folks updated.
Okay. And yes, and can we get a motion on capital plan?
Sure thing. Move to approve the final FY21 capital plan as it relates to the school department.
Seconded by Sean.
Second. Sure. Second.
Sean. I'm sorry.
Great.
Can't blame it on. I can't blame it on the hour. It's not late, so go ahead, Gail.
I feel like it's late. I don't know why. So this, again, similar to what we do with the operating budget, we like to just have the committee approve the final capital plan, acknowledging that some of them are directly part of the school's budget and part of it is included in the facilities core budget, but we do carve out the pieces directly related to the schools. It's a relatively smaller capital plan for next year, but we are fortunate that the typical technology, large-scale projects, as well as the phone replacement is included. The item we had talked about as part of the budget is we do have money in there to do a scoping project. As we add more and more devices, this is really to look at all of the various head-end rooms within the technology realm to make sure what we're doing is optimizing everything. So rather than diving right into rewiring or making wholesale changes, we wanted to take a pause and really look at what we're doing to make sure any project we would put forth was fully vetted. So this is really following the path we've taken for some of our other larger technology projects. So I look at this the same as when we did Turf 2 and the security project, where we took a deep breath and said, okay, let's really look at what it is that we need. So that's what that money will be utilized for.
Any questions for Gail? Okay, ready for the vote?
Sorry, Chuck, I do have one quick question. Gail, where are we from a procurement perspective on these projects? I mean, how solid are these numbers?
They actually are, I would say they are very solid. The large scale technology projects, I've worked with Julian over the past couple of years to sort of do a 3 to 5 year plan of what we will do with the $100,000 each year. The phone system, this is the third one that we've done, so we're comfortable with the pricing because we've been able to have some scaling as we add more schools to it. So we've worked with the vendors to sort of get a gauge of what we think it would be. So we are comfortable with that. And then for the facilities related items, those we usually get a very good sense of what it will cost to do it. So we feel confident about the numbers. And these are all, for the first time in a while, relatively smaller projects that are easier to manage and have good sense of the pricing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's have a roll call. Aaron,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Carla,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
and Chuck. Aye. Thank you. Gail, before we move to the next one, while we're talking about capital, is there any more development on the since the last report on the, and I know it was just last week on the modular situation?
I know time is moving fast, but so they have mobilized on the site. So I did get an update today that DPW was actually out there doing some of the site work today, and Vanguard did reach out to us that they are looking to mobilize and have people on site tomorrow. So we are moving forward with trying to do as much of the groundwork as we can. Unfortunately, the delay is still going to be on the production side of it, but I said DPW was out there today. They've been great. I think they're back full boat with all of their people starting this week based upon phase 2, little a, C, whatever phase we're in of the reopening. So that was good news. And I know that Joe Huggins and the facilities group is monitoring it closely. They actually were out there today checking with DPW, and they'll be out there tomorrow when Vanguard shows up. So that is going as well as can be expected. So we're hoping all of the groundwork will be done ahead of schedule.
Thank you. Now we'll actually get a motion on the FY20 budget.
Sure. Before I do, I'd like to make one minor clarification. The second motion is aligned to the second bullet of the memo, and it says transfer up 500,000. It should be up to, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I'll just adjust appropriately from there.
Yeah.
So Chuck, do you want me to do them all at once, or you want me to do it one by one?
One by one.
Okay. So the first one then is move to transfer up to $10,000 from administration to school facilities, utilizing salary savings and expense savings to be utilized to purchase additional PPE.
Second.
So is there any, Gail, did you want to say anything or?
So I can, if it's okay, I'll try to give sort of a broad overview because it'll encompass all of it. So what we have been doing, and I do realize we just transferred money into administration because we were getting some sort of preliminary estimates, and now that we've been spending the past week really scrubbing all of the numbers as far as any legal, we were disputing a few phone invoices that we had tied up money for that fortunately it turned out in our favor that they agreed with us for some of the billing items, so that freed up money there. We've also been continuing to monitor all of our revolving funds. So for extended day, we did, because I have to give them credit, we are dialing, I call it dialing for dollars. We've reached out to all of our vendors to make sure we received all the invoices because it did appear as if a few were missing. So we did get a few more invoices in, which brought the revolving account balance lower than we had anticipated. I also, I have to give a shout out to Jen Stice as well, because I think we've been talking every day as we're going through the transportation since we had the approval to go with the negotiated rates. We've been working very closely with the vendors for that. We're working very closely with the out-of-district schools. So my goal in doing this tonight is, as we're looking at items and freeing up money, to coin a phrase that Chris Kelly used in her presentation, we're trying to be as nimble as we can to have the money in the right places to continue to execute the right purchases. And what I am trying to do is have a full balance between the technology, the curriculum, and the PPE, and a lot of the items we're buying are used across all of the cost centers. So even though I'm moving money from special ed to regular ed, it's because we're buying more devices, whether it's replacement technology, one-to-one devices, we're looking at hotspots, we're looking at curriculum. So my goal in all of this is to try to keep everybody where they need to be in the current environment. And Tom had asked us to also continue to look at the revolving account. So as part of this, we're also asking for approval to decrease the offsets as we finalize the year as well. And I did focus on the three most sensitive, looking at what the numbers might be for next year, being RISE, full day K, and extended day. So hopefully that gives a little bit of context to each individual one.
Yes, thank you. Is there any questions from the committee?
Chuck, I guess I had one, and it kind of covers them all. But Gail, just for clarity, each one of these motions says up to, so that's the nimbleness that you're asking for here. So we're giving you up to 10,000 in this case, and you may take 9,999 if you want. You may take 10,000, or you may take one, as it all ends up together. But you're asking for nimbleness here. We may end up finalizing this on Thursday, is potentially what may happen.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the approach we had taken last year, Tom. I don't remember if you remember the votes we did at this time of year to really allow that flexibility. So as I'm working with Jen and Chris to, all of these various agreements we've all mentioned, as we execute each one, this gives us the maximum flexibility to do it. And then we will report back exactly what we did.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we will vote on the, unless there's any questions, we'll vote on the first motion. Carla?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Chuck? Aye. Thank you. Okay, do you want to read the second motion?
Second motion, move to transfer up to 500,000 out of special education to regular education, 370,000, and facilities, 130,000. The funding will be utilized for curriculum, technology, and PPE purchases.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
You're welcome,
Just
Sean.
wanted to see if anybody was paying attention.
I almost seconded it.
I know, I was waiting for you.
I was like, I second.
Any other discussion? Okay, ready for the vote. Aaron?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Carla?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Chuck? Aye. Okay. That concludes tonight's business.
One more. Hold on, Chuck. There's one more motion. You ready for it?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, on that sheet?
Yeah, on that sheet. The offsets, yep. Move to
I'm sorry,
authorize.
yes. Yep.
Move to authorize to decrease the offsets in the following accounts. Extended day, decrease up to an additional $10,000. Full day kindergarten, decrease up to an additional $150,000. Rise preschool, decrease up to an additional $30,000.
Is there a second? And so that was based on the discussion from the prior meeting that you just indicated, Gail?
Yes.
Any other discussion? Okay, ready for the vote. Carla?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Chuck? Aye. And Now we will, and thank you, Aaron, reminding me, we need to read the emails from public input. Did you want to read the first one, Aaron? You're on mute.
Yes, yep, I will. Hang on, let me pull it up. Email came from Brian Hanley. Good evening. Number 1, was the Zoom subscription approved? Number 2, I understand that some parts of the 2019-2020 curriculum were purchased but not yet used, therefore will not require a full purchase next year. Can this offset expense be applied to extend online learning programs, e.g. Lexia, Epic, etc., through the summer as opposed to expiring June 30th?
Okay.
Sorry, do you want an answer on the Zoom? Is that helpful? Maybe for Aaron. We, just to let folks know, we signed the contract, issued a purchase order, sent everything to them. We have been calling and emailing daily, as I'm sure you've probably heard from others. They are a little backlogged and not necessarily quick to respond. The good news is we won't actually give them cash until they turn us on, but we have our IT department calling them at once, if not twice a day, to find out where we are in the queue. It's just, unfortunately right now, other than doing that, we're ready to set up the accounts, we're ready to move forward. We signed multiple agreements with them and physically issued them a purchase order. So we have done everything on our end that we can. Unfortunately, in this COVID world where everybody is attempting to do the same thing, you don't get not to throw them under a bus, but you don't necessarily get the quick turn you used to get if nobody else was trying to get the same service. So we will continue to work on it, and we will report back as soon as they respond to us. I think John Parks agrees with me because I can see him shaking his head. The sales side works great. They sold it to us and then they walked away.
At least they're selling again.
This is true. That is a step forward from when they would not even give us a quote.
I can answer the second part, Chuck. So the second part asked for online resources during the summer. A lot of the online tools that we used, many of them, frankly, were new to us, and most of them were offering free trials. So if students had access to certain tools, they could continue to access them. As far as the work that's on Google Classroom, all of the teachers have been told to leave those open so that students can access them through July. And I know either Heather or Allison referred to today at the list of online resources. Those are still in play, and those are on my website, halfway down on the learning and teaching page. So there are a lot of online resources that and activities that are available to parents. As far as, regularly opening up online resources, our teachers don't work all summer. So except for ESY that will have their own online components, we don't plan to add to them right now. We will be and again, a lot of them are continuing to be open. Most of the online resources that were used by teachers this spring, most of them are running at least through July.
Thank you. I don't have access to that with can someone read that second email? Someone else, or Carla?
Okay. This email comes from Jeff LaPata. Thank you for including us in this public school committee tonight. Some questions are included below. What is being done over the summer to prepare teachers to deliver a consistent live virtual learning experience across RPS in the event this is needed come September? That's question number one. Seems like there's three. The second question, Dr. Doherty and Ms. Kelly, are the following tenets in line with your goals for the 2020-2021 school year? If not, how do they differ? And there's 3 points. We will strive to achieve typical learning goals despite any obstacles or challenges we may encounter relative to COVID or otherwise. 2, we will make full-day traditional classroom available for all students without delay as soon as the Commonwealth allows. And 3, should virtual learning be required, it will be delivered in a full-day structured synchronous online schedule that mimics the traditional classroom experience. And then the third question, what tools and technologies will teachers be enabled to use for live virtual synchronous learning? Are these technologies in place today?
Okay, well,
John, do you want to answer any of those?
no, we'll, why don't we can respond to him in writing. That's, I didn't miss anything else. Any other emails?
No.
No more.
Okay. So we are meeting again on Thursday night on the 25th. So does anybody else have any other things they'd like to discuss tonight? You want to have a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Carla?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
And Chuck, aye. Thank you, everybody, and thank you to all the presenters as well. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.